Welcome to the QMindBody podcast. My name is Darren, and in this podcast, we talk about all things having to do with gay men's wellness, spirituality, and self-inquiry. And I am super excited for today's guest. He is a person that literally changed my life when I was coming out. So it's a deep honor to be able to interview him. It's Greg Louganis. He's the famous Olympic diver and activist and all around great guy. We're going to talk about what he's been up to since his days in the Olympics and how he managed to stay so darn young. I want to know his secret. Before we get to that, if you have questions for Greg or me, you can drop them in the comments and we'll keep an eye on those and try to respond accordingly. I'll put links to Greg's website so you can get in touch with him if you'd like, along with links to my website and social media, where you can connect with other members of the QMindBody community. And finally, this is being sponsored by the Gay Wellness website, which has massage therapists and coaches and psychotherapists and every form of wellness provider you can imagine all over the world, probably in your neighborhood. So check them out for somebody really awesome near you. With that, I'm going to bring in Greg, and we're going to chat about so many cool things. Greg, welcome.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
I told you some of this off air, but it bears repeating. I was a young closeted gay boy when you were in the Olympics in the 80s, mid to late 80s. You were several times.
Yeah.
And you really stood out to me.
Actually, it was the 80s.
You did the whole 80s. You
The
were like,
whole 80s. Because my first Olympics was 1976 Montreal. I was
wow.
a silver medalist there. 1980, we didn't send a team. That was Moscow.
I
And
remember talking about that in school, how there was like the boycott because it was in Moscow, right?
yeah, because in Soviet Union's invasion of Afghanistan, I was world champion after in 78. So I was like, opposed to do well in Moscow. And a lot of my friends, and teammates, they didn't make the team and didn't make any other Olympic team.
Yeah.
So it was a
And
tough time.
correct me if I'm wrong, but being an Olympic athlete in more than one Olympics is a pretty big deal, isn't it? Like it's hard because you're sort of aging, and in Olympic years, it's like dog years, right? Like
Right. It's
so for you to be in three, well, what would be four
it
Olympics
would have been four.
had you gone to Moscow?
Yeah.
That's pretty darn impressive in itself.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not typical.
Yeah. Well, in any event, as a young gay boy, I didn't know anything about diving at the time. I did know that I was very thrilled that there were these beautiful men in Speedos everywhere. And it was like the only like outlet I had. And then I don't know, I don't really remember everything, but I remember you were openly gay. I don't know if you were outed
Yeah.
or if you came out willingly.
Yeah. I mean, okay. So, a lot of people ask, well, when did you come out? And, it's coming out as a process. So the first person you have to come out to is yourself. And so, but, I did it kind of in stages. It was generally my policy when I was diving, not to discuss my personal life with members of the media. And back then, the members of the media, the reporters, they were very respectful. And so there was plenty to read between the lines. You could figure it out that I was gay. I didn't try and hide it really in any way. So yeah, I came out to the public in 1994 at the Gay Games in New York. And so then I welcomed the athletes and I said, it's great to be out and proud and all that. And it was wonderful. It was beautiful. It was a great time to be in New York. And I went to the diving. I even did a diving exhibition. I did the announcing for the diving, at that
Wow.
competition. So it was great. Dear friend Michael Wantuck was, in charge, and he said, "Will you announce for us?" I said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, sure." So it was great. It was a wonderful time to be in New York, and it was, it was very very supportive.
Yeah.
So that was nice.
I I my memory, and again, I was like middle school, early high school.
Hmm.
I remember you hitting your head on the platform
Springboard,
and the
spring,
springboard.
yeah.
See, this is how little I know about diving. Um, and I remember it being a big deal because of HIV, which was people were terrified,
Yeah.
and for me, and I think for a lot of people in the broader public, you represented health
Hmm.
and fitness, right? You were clearly like this like fit specimen of a man, doing these incredible feats off the diving board.
Yeah.
And to see you and to learn that you were HIV positive and to both see the insane reaction that the public had, but also to see you, at least in my memory, you were the one who started to shift that narrative that
Mhm.
HIV doesn't necessarily equal sickness and death.
Right. Well,
Um,
so let
it,
me give you, back up, because I didn't come out about my HIV status until 1995, well after I retired from the sport. Um, it was an interesting process because I was doing Jeffrey in '93, the
the
play,
play or the movie?
the play. I went in for Brian Batt, who played Darius in the movie. He was the original, and so I went in for Brian in New York at the Minetta Lane Theater, and so I was doing the play. I think I was with the play for 6 months or so, and so I was able to live out my fantasies and my fears, because Darius was out and proud and in gay pride marches and on TV, uh, and in Cats, in the musical Cats. And he also dies in the movie, complications with AIDS. And so I was able to, face those fears and fantasies. And so that was for me, it was the next step for my progress. And I reached out to a dear friend of mine, Robbie Brown, and I said, I want to write a book. And he said, "Oh, I'll introduce you to Eric Marcus." And so I met Eric Marcus. We hit it off and ended up writing the book together. So yeah, and then when it was that was in '94. One of the things that happened that Eric shared with me after the fact was that Random House made him sign a contract that he would have the book done within 1 year, because they were afraid that I was going to die.
Wow.
And so it was, but that was the climate at that time,
Yeah.
and then, what happened was, um, I knew that the book was going to be hit the stands, published in '95, and I had a speed contract with Speedo, or Authentic Fitness Speedo, and they have a morals clause and all that stuff. And so I knew I was going to be free and clear of that. Well, Linda Wapner said, "Well, we want to keep you on." I said, "Linda, we got to have a talk." And so I went over to her house in the Hamptons for breakfast, and I came out to her about my HIV status. I said that, my sexuality is going to be in the book, my HIV status is going to be in the book, and she was just concerned. She had so many of her friends who got sick and lost their homes, and she said, "I don't want you to lose your home. I don't want to see that." So she said, my commitment is for life, and she stood by me. It was just really, really sweet and wonderful. Um, and so, but it, it, that was the process, to
Yeah.
get there, to start.
Can I ask you a question? Because my memory might be really bad. It
Yeah.
is really bad. Um, it seems to me there was a lot of innuendo in the news. Um, when you were actually in the Olympics, not later on when your book came out.
Mm.
Am I remembering that correctly?
Uh, no, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't, Darren, I have to be honest, I don't read my press. So
That's why you look so great.
I don't know what they write about me. A lot of the reporters have been, friends, and they've
Yeah.
been around for, a long time.
Yeah.
And so we've become friends, but I don't read what they write.
Well, let's shift gears. I will just say my coming out
Yeah.
and the reframing of the HIV narrative. People who watch this or listen to this podcast know that I'm also positive. Was really like there were several people along the way, prominent people that sort of shaped the narrative about HIV.
Mhm.
And it took, what was a horrible disease that was compounded by like what we believed about it and what we believed about people that had it.
Mhm.
The people that these sort of like turning points, and I really feel like your being open was a huge one because it again it shifted that narrative, at least for me, and I think for
Yeah.
others. So thank you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Magic Johnson, that was, a big turning point. Um, and, it's, yeah, it's made an incredible shift, to it. It was interesting because, I also suffered from depression, even when I was a kid. And so I went to my mom when I was 12 years old, and I said, "Mom, I can understand how a person can die of sadness." I didn't see
Wow.
it as, suicide. I didn't see it the same way. And so then when I was diagnosed with HIV, I was 28. And at that time, it was like 2 years, get your affairs together. And so I knew I would never see 30. I mean, I was
Hmm.
prepared to die. And here I am at 65. And, you know, I, I wasn't prepared to live. So I'm like making all these adjustments. I mean, it really has been challenging. It's like, now what?
This is a good segue into sort of your mindfulness life.
Mm,
But for me, and I suspect it's true for you, I feel like most people live their lives and then are shocked when death is at their door.
mm,
Whether they're older or younger, or whenever it comes, it's coming for all of us.
mhm.
For me, like believing that I wasn't going to see another 10 years, and then when things changed and it became clear that the medicines were working and
Yeah,
working well and didn't have a lot of side effects, the newer ones anyway,
yeah,
but I didn't, I never really let go of um, that belief that this is a temporary assignment here.
yeah.
And so you better squeeze all the juice you can out. I
Mm,
feel like in hindsight, given that I was one of the ones that survived and did lived well, um, I feel like it was such a gift
yeah,
because I do see life different than many other people.
yeah. I mean, and I get it, and I appreciate it. That it makes it's almost like getting the cancer diagnosis, and then life becomes more precious.
Mm.
Um, for me, it's been I've seen a different side of it, because I'm coming from a different space. I didn't think I would be here, and I'm still here, and was like, why? And so challenging. Haven't I done enough? Damn it. Can I just go? Um, but then also making that shift, which I'm doing in the process of, because I've been doing a lot of healing work. Um, is okay. What does this part of my life mean? What does what's it all about? And so yeah, I'm in the process of figuring that out. I mean, I auctioned off my medals. It really is about letting go. What I'm getting. I mean, it's like Ram Dass when he wrote "Becoming Nothing," or I think it was "Becoming Nothing." But just letting go of all of those things, all of those labels, all of those titles, all of those things. Who am I at the core? Who is Greg Louganis without all of the medals, the titles, the this, the that, and so it really has been kind of a journey of discovery.
Well, let's talk about that because I'm curious where you're at with all of that because I think it's a hard one for all of us, but I think for somebody who has such a reputation, right? You worked so
Yeah.
hard to get where you were, and like to auction off your medals. I mean, they symbolize something pretty amazing, and you're so much more than that. And coming to that couldn't have been easy. I wouldn't think.
Okay, so I mean, and that's another thing is like people make assumptions. They assume, okay, so I won all these national titles, I won the world championships, Pan American Games, Olympic Games. I must be really competitive. I am not competitive. I'm not competitive at all. I'm writing about it in my new book. Um, the working title, I don't know if it's going to stay, but it's From Free Fall to Flow.
Wow, I love it. As a yoga teacher.
Yeah, from free fall to flow. Stop competing, start performing. Because I was a performer. I started when I was a year and a half doing dance and acrobatics. I was performing on stage since I was 3 years old, singing and dancing. I did sang Dance With Me, and I did a little tap number. And then I got a partner, and so I've always been a performer. I looked at the people who I was supposed to be competing against, the other participants. They were my inspiration, and so I want to try to, I talked to the World Aquatics Development Conference, just this winter in January, I think it was, and talked about that, about making that shift, because it's not. We know who the top people are when you're, in the top 1%, of your sport. You know who the top players are, and those people are usually friends, because
Mm.
you're pushing each other and you're inspiring each other, and so that's where, and we should be celebrating human excellence,
Mm.
not competition. I mean, it's even like in professional wrestling, they have a SmackDown, and you see that, if you have to have conflict to, to have a story. And so, yeah, athletes are, kind of pushed into, into feeding into that by the marketing, arm, and, to get covered. And that's really not who they are. They'll have a SmackDown,
Mm,
and then they'll go out and have, beers at the bar, and say, "Oh, I love that," and they're, a lot of them are friends. you know
mm,
it's and that's what the kids don't see, and that's what I'd like to get through to, especially to kids, that it's
mm,
not, we live in a more abundant world, that it doesn't have to be, this competition. Oh, I'm going to kick your ass, or, it's not that, it doesn't have to be
yeah.
that.
Um, Let me ask you about your meditation and yoga practice,
Mhm.
just because it's near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
You seem to have a calmness about you now. Um, Maybe you always did. I don't know, but you seem to have at
It's
least in our conversation, like a centeredness, a groundedness,
yeah.
and yoga is what you're describing. That idea of non-competition is
Hmm.
very much a big part of yoga. It's like you're sort of challenging yourself, but not for the outward performance of it, but the inner thing that you create for yourself.
Hmm.
And I'm wondering what brought you to that, to yoga and meditation and
Well, it's funny because, like, I think I was, 9, 10, 11 years old, somewhere around there. Um, my father, I snuck in. I was in his office. I was looking at his bookshelf, and I saw this because I was a huge fan of Kung Fu, David Carradine. I was like
yeah.
a huge fan. I was like, oh my God, he can control his breath. He can control his heartbeat. He can control, all of these things, and, just, using his mind. And also, I found this book and then cassette tapes in my dad's office, and it was Jose Silva's Method for Mind Control. And when I saw mind control, it was like, oh, I just dug into it. And so that's where I learned a lot of the visualization, the breathing exercises, all of that stuff. And so, and also I started visualizing when I was 3 years old. My first performance on stage was when I was 3. And so my teacher, right before the recital, I get my costume, and there's a top hat, there's a cane. And so some of the choreography kind of was shifted, to be accommodating to those things. And so she said, do the routine fluid, put the music on, and left the room. I was 3 years old. My interpretation was, do the routine fluid, imagine myself doing the routine fluid. And then it took about 4 times before I got it fluid, making all of the transitions and everything. And then I found her. I said, okay, I made it fluid. And then so she came back in the studio and she increased the tempo. So it was faster than what I was going to be performing. And she played the music and she said, make it fluid. She put the music on. And the first time out, it was fluid. And she said, fine, you're ready. So that's how I learned visualization. I was 3 years old. That's how I interpreted it. And I thought everybody did that.
Hmm. Did that influence? I mean, 3 years old, that was probably before you were probably swimming, but
Yeah, before
I
that.
mean, I don't know when you started diving, but
I started swimming. I taught myself how to swim. My godmother had a pool in her backyard. I think I was about 2 years old. and I taught myself how to swim. I used to terrorize my mom and my aunt, my godmother, because like what I do is like they knew I was in the pool and they'd be in the kitchen, and they could see the pool, but I'd get in a space where I'd go in the corner and I'd, be breathing from there. So they see that, the pool's still and they don't see me and they know that I'm in the pool. So there's like, they come running out. It's like, Gregory Efthymius, whenever they said my middle name, I knew I was in trouble.
That was always a sign of trouble when your parents use the middle name.
Right. Yeah.
Um, well, I have one more question for you. I don't know if you've read this book yet. Somebody turned me on to it, and I couldn't put it down. It was called Him, and it's
Mm,
fiction. It's written by two women, and it's about two gay hockey players. And it's really, really, it's very erotic and
yeah.
it's a beautiful love story. But a big piece of it is how hard it is for them to be involved playing a pro sport,
Yeah.
in this case, hockey.
Mhm.
And it seems like it's still a big deal when a professional athlete comes out.
Mhm.
And this is many, many years after you did it,
Yeah.
right? There's just not that many, and I'm sure there are many pro athletes who are
Mhm.
gay and lesbian. And why haven't we made more progress? I mean, we had trailblazers like you, or Caitlyn Jenner. Bruce at one time was an around the same time you were in the
No
Olympics,
shit.
right?
We were in the opening ceremony together. We marched in
Yeah.
together. Yeah. In Montreal.
And now Bruce is Caitlyn Jenner, and so there's these examples, but they seem so few and far between. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's okay when you're talking team sports. That was one thing when I was on book tour in '95. A lot of athletes would come to me and say, well, they wish they could do what I did, or um, they have questions. Some of them were in team sports, and they said, "Well, what would you advise me to do?" And it's like, what, I can't, because like I was in an individual sport. I didn't have to rely on anyone else.
Hmm.
I mean, I had some stuff happen during my diving career. There was a whole fag buster campaign at one of the competitions. And, usually that stuff doesn't bother me so much. And also, I mean, it sounds homophobic, but I think for the majority of it, knowing the people who were involved, it was more jealousy, than it was homophobia. With one
Yeah.
individual, it was definitely homophobia because he's since come out. He just hated, and I felt bad. I felt sorry for him because I knew that he hated me so much, because he hated himself, you know, and so that,
Hmm.
um, that's, and it, it was hard. I think that a big thing you hear a lot of is don't take anything personally. Even though it's not easy to do all the time. So,
Yeah.
I tried not to take, any of that stuff personally.
Yeah. Well, I think it should not be courageous. People should just be able to be who they are.
Yeah.
But you are one of the courageous ones that has done that. And I think my son is almost 16, and he has one friend that has come out as gay and another that has transitioned from male to female. And their coming out stories have been quite different than ours.
Yeah.
Um, and but it's because a collective effort from all of us
Mhm.
but particularly from prominent people like yourself, that where the consequence is higher. I remember like when Ellen came out and people were like, "What's the big deal?" I'm like, "The
Yeah.
big deal is people get to see her
Yeah.
like in a way that they don't see, the lesbian couple down the street."
Hmm.
So it's just, I your courage is impressive, and I think it should be celebrated.
Yeah. Thank
I
you.
hope more prominent athletes come forward.
Yeah. And it's gotten better. I mean, you've got Gus Kensworthy. You've got who's out, Matthew Mitchum. And I have so much respect for Matthew because he came out and he said, "Well, I couldn't compete at that high level, only sharing a part of me." And I
Mm.
thought that was so admirable. And then Tom Daly, he's married to Dustin Lance Black, and has kids. They have kids. So it's different. It is different.
Yeah.
Um, um, wasn't it Jason Collins who was he was a basketball player who came out, or there's been a few.
You're asking the wrong gay
Yeah,
boy. Yeah. When it
there's
comes to basketball.
few. Yeah, yeah. I, Darren, I'm the same way. I don't follow. I love playing sports, but watching
Yeah.
not so much.
I was on an airplane once flying back to San Francisco, and there was this guy who it was as long before the MAGA movement, but I assume in hindsight he would have had a red ball cap on had it been the right timing. But he said something like, um, "Yo, you're going back to San Francisco? Are you a big Giants fan?" And I'm like, "I'm not into baseball." He's like, clearly not. The Giants are a football team."
Yeah, football.
Like, or
Yeah,
the baseball team. I don't know. I had it backwards because of the Giants in New York. Anyway, I got the side eye, like, oh, he's flying to San Francisco and doesn't know the sports team. So
yeah,
I outed myself to the redneck. Awkward. um. Anyway, Greg, it was really amazing to chat with you, and like I said, it's an honor to be able to thank you. Um, Again, like I think of those formative years, not having role models,
yeah,
and having people like you, especially when you formally came out, writing your book,
yeah,
and just giving an alternate image of what life could be like.
yeah.
Um,
It,
and
it's
it's
tough.
important, and
Yeah,
I yeah.
it's tough being a pioneer. But somebody's got to start. And so I'm grateful that I had the gumption or courage to do it. I knew that for me personally, that was my next step. That was
Yeah.
important to me. To be who I am unapologetically.
Yeah.
And so that and a lot of things have changed. Where Gus Kensworthy and Tom Daly, they're getting opportunities because of their sexuality. Um,
Yeah.
I think that we're in a very challenging time right now. I think that I think everywhere, there's just this kind of energy that is kind of all over the place right now. But I think I feel we're going to get through it. And it's all gonna, it's all just going to be better on the other side.
I Most of the time I have my
Yeah,
moments of like freak out, but I'm right there with you. I feel like this is going to be painful,
it
but I
is.
feel it's sort of like the AIDS crisis. It felt like it would never end. It felt like we would never see normal again,
Yeah,
and that it would always be bad. And it was pretty bad
it was
for a
pretty.
long time.
Yeah,
And but we did it. Like not everyone survived it, but collectively we moved through it. And I feel like we were, we as a community were stronger,
right.
like forged in fire.
Well, the one thing that sometimes I get a little frustrated with, you know, with gay men, is that a lot of the lesbians were there for us.
Yeah.
They were the ones who were holding our hands and bedpans. you know,
Literally.
literally, yeah.
Yeah.
So and so I think it's important that we um, that we all stay connected.
Yeah. Well, I feel I've been thinking about this a lot. As a matter of fact, for this podcast, I want to do an episode talking to a few members of the trans community
Mm,
and asking like what can we as gay men do to give back, that pay it
mhm.
forward, that in our moment of crisis
Right.
our lesbian sisters were there to hold our bedpans.
Hmm.
um Trans kids are being attacked, like they're shutting down clinics. It's getting really scary, and
Yeah.
I think they need us. They need us to stand with them.
Yeah. Well, a dear friend of mine is Kristen Worley. She's a transgender ex-white female. Um, she was a water skier, and then she went into cycling for Canada. And so she wrote Woman Enough was the book that she wrote. Just sharing her journey, and her challenges, with the international governing body of cycling, as well as the International Olympic Committee and all that stuff. Um, and so we communicate almost daily. You know,
Yeah.
she's done some really incredible work. Um, you know, I, there's a design flaw in it as far as the Olympics is concerned for inclusion, because the modern day Olympics were created by men, for men, for the entertainment of men. So women's sports is still evolving, and
Mm.
in the system that they have, it's very binary. So it's men's and women's. There's no way that they can be inclusive to the trans and intersex communities. There's.
I'm curious, because I hear people argue this. I know how I feel about it, and but I understand. It's one of those things where I really do understand where both sides are coming from. I
Mm,
don't always. I'm wondering, how do you become more inclusive when it's set up in such a binary way?
well, okay, in my utopia, is
I'll meet you there. Your utopia
I
sounds perfect.
yeah, I would like to see the International Olympic Committee, offer an olive branch to the gay games, because Dr. Tom Waddell, who started the gay games, which was the gay Olympics, he was sued for using Olympics, and he died penniless. But and then it became the gay games. Now they already have the infrastructure for the gay games. If the International Olympic Committee were to come together and offer them an olive branch, they could have their own Olympics. It'd be a part of the Olympics. And
So
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 it's,
basically there would be like a intersex or
well,
um
it would be an open games. So,
So men, women, non-binary, trans
yeah,
could choose to compete
yeah,
in, say, diving, regardless of their gender identity and biological sex.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because then, you know, everything's up front, it's above board, everybody's, in alignment. We're not taking anything away from anyone else. We have the Olympics and the Paralympics, and then we could have the Open Olympics, which,
Mm.
would this way, you're not going to get the blowback of, unfair and
Yeah.
the whole cheating thing. And I have a whole different view on the whole cheating thing, because actually, I mean, a lot of the medications for that are performance enhancing drugs, there's a lot of research. I mean, as an elite athlete, we're guinea pigs anyways. So they're using
Mm.
us as guinea pigs, seeing how we, function and operate. Um, and a lot of the drugs that are performance enhancing drugs, they're helping people, in chemotherapy, or I went through a period of time where I was wasting, and so I went on to human growth hormone, all of the these medications, anabolic steroids, and all that, just to maintain my health and wellness.
Yeah.
So,
I'm curious, and I promise this will be my last question. How is your health and wellness? I mean, like,
oh,
coming out as HIV positive when you did, it felt probably to the world and probably to you as well,
yeah,
like a death sentence.
yeah,
And here
yeah.
you are at 65, looking fantastic.
Well, thank you.
I mean, like you look maybe 50. Like,
Ah,
so I mean, like whatever you're doing, keep doing it and write it down so I can do it too. But you've defied the odds. And not only are you alive, you're alive and very, very well, at least
yeah,
from what I can see.
yeah. Well, um, the whole mental aspect of it, the mental, emotional. Um, Whenever you're told that you have to take a medication for the rest of your life, that can be a little daunting. One of the things and if I have a depressive episode, generally what happens is I stop taking my meds. And so I just had a episode just recently, and my doctors were like kind of screaming at me. It's like, I was just fed up, the whole
Mm.
Medicare thing, the insurance, and then, of course, I'm taking it personally, thinking, oh God, nobody cares about me, so why should I care about me? And so I went down that rabbit hole, and so I stopped taking my meds for a period of time, and then my doctor, I felt I turned a corner, started going to therapy again, and it's like, okay, I think, I got to figure this out, and went back on my meds, and so.
Have you talked to your doctor about Cabo Nova? This could be a long rabbit hole, but it's the
No,
injectable. I go every 2 months. It's wonderful.
really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's every 2 months you get an injection, one in each butt cheek.
Oh,
And you can sort of forget, you put it in your calendar and you sort of forget
oh,
about it. And
huh.
the thing I like about it is it's not taking a pill every day and
Yeah,
like I gotta take my HIV meds. It's like I feel like I live like a normal life with just this little added quick trip to the doctor
yeah.
every 2 months.
Can you do self administer, or
They
do
won't let you because and it's very expensive. Like,
they? Okay.
not to me, my insurance covers it, but like they have to keep it refrigerated and take it
Uh,
out right when you get there. It's
uh,
sort of it's not quite there yet for like mass use, but if you ask your doctor, and my labs have been fantastic. So
yeah.
I don't know like what the criteria is, if it would be good for you or not. But it's certainly convenient, and it feels so much better
Yeah.
just on that not taking a pill every day front.
Yeah, I mean, because like it's I'm on a weird concoction,
Mm,
Tivicay and uh, is it Celzentri, I think, but it's just an odd combination.
mm,
Um, yeah, but I'm also resistant, because I've been positive since '88. And that's another thing that's really interesting is that I didn't realize because they put me on AZT right away. And I didn't
mm,
realize one of the side effects of AZT is depleting your testosterone. And I was literally crawling from my bed in the morning when I was in training to the bathroom,
mm,
pour myself the hottest bath so I could, function, so I could touch my toes and I could walk. I mean,
mm.
I thought I was overtraining, but obviously it was probably the
Yeah.
ACT. And also, if you watch the 87 Pan American Games versus the 88 Olympic Games, I wasn't jumping as high, I wasn't spinning as fast.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen you in probably all of the games. It's hard to recall, but
Yeah.
you always looked like you were spinning quite fast to me,
Yeah.
to my
But
untrained eye.
I could see it. I mean, I could see it,
Yeah.
So it was, definitely,
Mm.
AZ2 was not a performance enhancing drug.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well, um, let's give everybody your website. And if you ever want to come back on, there's like 5 million things I would love to chat with you about. And if you ever want to come up to San Francisco or to Berkeley, we should do an event up here. It'd be fun.
yeah, yeah. Actually, a diver that I worked with, Cassidy Krug, she just wrote a book and she went to Stanford.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, so she asked if I could. We did. I interviewed her down here in Orange County, and she said she wants to do an event up there.
Well, let's be in touch because I have an idea already.
Oh, good, good.
So let's what's your website again?
So GregLouganis.com, and all of my social media is at Greg Louganis, Instagram and Twitter and what is it, TikTok. I don't have anybody doing. I did have somebody doing my social media, but they're no longer working with me for and so I have to do it myself if I'm going to get it done. So there's a lot I have to learn.
Hmm.
So just
Well, I was impressed. You got back with me. So,
we did, yeah,
um, thank you so much. And for those of you watching, if you have questions for Greg, you can drop them in the comments or follow him on social. Share this if you feel so inclined and subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, or you can join our community on Instagram or Facebook. Greg, you're awesome. You're even more awesome, like having spent a little bit of time chatting with you today. You just really, and like I said, you gave hope to people like me back then. And
um,
my past self, channeling my past self, um, yeah, you made coming out and finding out I was positive and not absolutely freaking out.
yeah,
I absolutely freaked out anyway, but
yeah,
not quite as bad because there were people like you that you could look at and say, well, he's healthy.
yeah,
He's looking pretty good. So it was very hopeful, and I will always appreciate that. So
yeah,
thank you.
yeah. My pleasure, and thank you, thank you.
We will see you all in the next episode.